Fantastic. So, welcome everybody to my brief introduction to Cacao practice, the powerful work of connecting consciously, intentionally, and regularly, you could say, with cacao, with the cacao spirit, and of course with the cacao itself, with the drink, with the beans. But I'm saying the cacao spirit in the first place because the practice and the power of the practice really lies in connecting with the intelligence, the emotional, energetic, spiritual intelligence that cacao is, and that let's say her fruits, the beans, are a product of, and then the drink that's produced from the beans, of course. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining. Those of you that are here, that are following and seeing the live stream, it's a blessing to be able to share a little bit of the process, the journey that I've been on with cacao, and I hope that this little transmission, it will be about a half hour to 40 minutes, will support you in creating a deeper understanding for yourself, what cacao can do for you, and how your life, with or without cacao, can actually be shaped powerfully through ritual practice. And when I'm talking about practice, I'm talking about something that has a certain rhythm or regularity. And just like with any kind of substance, it's all in the way we use it. So cacao, if we have a strong practice with cacao, we may actually create some kind of dependency on the cacao physically. But actually, if we tend to use it with intention, and if we're aware and sharing our gratitude with the spirit of the cacao and inviting the spiritual, emotional, energetic being into our space, there's a much deeper transformation that can take place. And why I'm saying this is because it'll help powerfully in approaching anything that we're doing and being within our lives. So practicing or creating a practice with cacao is much more in the space that we create to work with the medicine, the way that we treat the medicine, and that we communicate with the medicine, and that we welcome the medicine into our space. And it very beautifully reflects. So my own experience has been that creating space to work ritually with the cacao actually made me understand that the way that the medicine comes through and speaks and offers transformations is just, you can't compare it to having a recreational way of approaching this. And it's the same for so many things that we do in life. Some of the most simple things, when they're ritualized, can become much more expansive, can become much more enjoyable, can become much more supportive. And the reason is because a ritual container that we consciously choose to create basically allows us to actually fully be present. And more than ever now, this is so important because our ways of life in the Western societies are very fast, very speedy, let's say. And now also with technology being such a big player for most people in the daily life, our attention tends to be in a lot of different places at the same time. So creating a conscious setting for whatever it is that our intention is, really allows for us to sink in and to really be present in that moment and bring powerfully our awareness to what it is that we're doing. And oftentimes I hear from people, I've been to cacao rituals or cacao ceremonies or workshops, and it's been like, yeah, it was all right. I didn't really feel so much. But yeah, we had fun. And it's a very common story. And honestly, why that happens in the first place is because that whole directive aspect of creating a space and honoring the time and the space that we get to spend with this medicine is just so important. And it's something that our culture at large has lost. But ritual and ritualizing a lot of things, a lot of very daily life things, mundane things, you could say, has been an essential part of all the land-based, all the indigenous cultures of this planet that I know of anyway. And it's something that cacao has deeply taught me to embrace again, to truly step up in that way, and to turn something that may be beautiful in and of its own into something that may actually fully bring the magic of this moment and the magic of the medicine of that moment, with or without cacao. Having said that, cacao also truly enables a sense of deep presence. And that's actually what I want to talk about today, is how to live powerfully sentient with the cacao. So honestly, I think the word powerful, or that part of what I want to talk about today, powerfully sentient. So that part, powerful, I think, is mostly reflected in how do we create space? How do we, with our own intention and with our own care and with our own directive capacities, choose to create a container and choose to create a certain set of boundaries that we're going to journey in. That in and of itself is a very powerful act. And then sentient, what happens is when we're in that space, we're actually much more present and allowing ourselves to be sentient, because, running from one place to the next, maybe I'm exaggerating, not everybody's always running, but a lot of people are nowadays. Running from one place to the next doesn't actually give us space to feel, because we're goal-oriented. And we're actually zoning out from what's around us in order to get to where we want to go. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a universal force, let's say a masculine directive capacity to move towards something and have clarity on what that looks like. But when we use that power to create a container, there's a conscious holding that happens, a holding of the magic of the presence. And in that space, we can actually feel. So maybe you've had experiences where you feel like you're stressed out or you've gone over your boundaries, and just creating for yourself the time and space to, for example, sit in the garden for a little while or lie in the hammock for a little while. You making the conscious choice that this time is for me allows you to come back into the feeling and being in the present and in the body. So that powerful act allows us to then, with or without cacao, deeply be present. And so when we do that for the cacao and with the cacao, there's a real capacity to receive the medicine. And this level of holding an intentionality, I don't mean to say there's a right or wrong, but it's a much deeper invitation for all the participants in the space and for the medicine itself to really be there and to really co-create and converge in a space and time that may not be so common to be in our daily life experience. The thing is, we're so used and trained as well, to a certain extent, conditioned, let's say, to interact with our outside world in a very mind-based way, because the societies are built on quite mental pillars and concepts in the West. And so in order to live, basically a lot of our energy is in the mind and in the mental environments, because that's what our worlds are built on largely. So creating space to be in our bodies, to really deeply feel, is a true blessing. And it's a bit like a time outside the ordinary. It's a space outside the ordinary. And if we consciously come together there with other humans with the same intentionality, and with the same desire to be present, and feel and be human together, whatever the intention may be, there's a real beautiful influx of magic that may take place. And so a few years ago, in 2020, when the coronavirus pandemic started, I felt like it was time for me to create space, to create a program, to create, let's say, a container to teach and transmit what I've been taught myself and by my environment and by my journey with Cacao, to transmit, to basically train other facilitators to be able to hold a solid space, because I'd heard so many different stories about Cacao rituals being mediocre, or Cacao rituals being something that's not so powerful. And honestly, this medicine is just really quite exceptional, because it's very accessible. So it basically adapts itself. It's very versatile. It adapts itself to how our capacity is to work with it. If for whatever reason we're deciding to be in resistance to it, then it's still going to offer us, a nice time, a beautiful feeling, and a capacity to enjoy what we're doing, and maybe be more focused or creative. It'll give us a buzz. And at the same time, it's also opening the doorways for what we have the capacity and the willingness to step into. And in that sense, it's actually, in a way, more powerful than plant teachers that may be, strictly speaking, more intense, or that will take us on a journey. Because it'll count on our sovereignty, or it'll work with our sovereignty. Maybe sovereignty is not the right word, but with our willingness to, on all levels, take the step into the doors that are being opened, into our hearts, really. And Cacao helps for beautiful balance, to create a beautiful balance between body and spirit, and the heart in that space is at home. It's at home in that paradox of the eternal and the physical, let's say, the material that's limited in time and the space. So in that way, Cacao can truly help us to live powerfully sentient. And if we're journeying with Cacao in a regular way, in such a way and with intention, and taking our time and creating the space and the environment that we need to truly up-level and receive the messages from this medicine, it can really ripple out in a lot of areas, a lot of different areas in our lives. And yeah, that's resulted for me personally also very, very beautifully. Just so many different ways of being with life and being with other people and being with my environment have opened up since journeying with Cacao. The first moment I stepped into Keith's Cacao ceremonies, Cacao shaman Keith Wilson, who lives in Guatemala. This was back in 2013 or 14. I remember stepping into the ritual and sitting down with a whole bunch of people packed on his porch on a pretty small space, receiving the cacao cup, not even having drunk, just being with the presence of this chocolate, with his intention, with these people at that time. I just started crying, and I was crying for the longest time. I just let it happen. I had no idea why, what was coming through, until at a specific point, we'd already been drinking the cacao at that point, but I was probably crying for more than an hour, until at a specific point, there was a tipping point, and this sadness started to fade away and create space inside of my being for something fresh, for maybe not something fresh, maybe I could even say something that the love that exists in all of us and exists in myself had already wanted for me, or had already existed within me, but that I chose to, through conditionings, chose to cover up. And so cacao can really assist if we're holding a beautiful space for it with respect and care and integrity. It can really assist in helping us move through these processes, which may be gentle, which may be hard, which may be intense, maybe short, maybe long. But the beauty is that the cacao can truly help to powerfully be sentient to the processes that are happening. So it really allows for a deeper sense of, I want to say concentration, but it's more like it helps us to more easily come home into being the observer, being the one that is eternal. And that's a part of everything, including all, ourselves. To be in that part and to really shift the identity there, and to see and observe and hold precious the one that's in this human experiences, and that's experiencing and transmuting some of the density and the pains and the conditionings that it's taken on. And at the same time, it really helps to connect deeply to the body and everything that it's experiencing. So in my cacao trainings, basically the first step is to allow a journey and to stimulate and support participants through a journey in that space, and to hand some tools that will help them also taking that practice of being able to move with what's alive in the moment further and out into their daily life. From that space, there's a potential for a deeper connection with the medicine itself. And basically the invitation then for the second part of the journey is for the cacao to come in as an ally as we journey into our own medicine. And what I mean by that is, as we're clearing away layers and as we're seeing different parts of ourselves that we may have had to hide for whatever reason, there's more clarity and there's more potential that starts to pour through little by little, and we're open, and then we open doors for the inquiry. What's there? What's my true excitement in this world and for myself, and how can I be with that more fully for myself in the first place? And how do I see this? How do I feel this? How do I create space in my life for that to be more embraced? And from that space, and then I'm guiding participants into, from that space, do you feel like there's something that you want to bring into this world, something that you want to offer and ground and anchor, whether it's holding space for groups, or whether it's for friends, or whether it's just for yourself? Is there something that wants to authentically pour from you, however big or small, or big or small are also maybe not the right words to use here, but however ambitious or however grand or however minute it may be, what wants to come from your true authentic space? And then how can the cacao support you in creating a juicy, fun and playful and an empowering environment for yourself to do that? So throughout the whole training, there's a big invitation for play, for fun, for being present with the medicine of our own child inside, because cacao truly has that capacity to bring us much more deeply to that, to the wisdom of that little one inside of us, where we can reconnect with the master of that inner child, actually, the master, how masterful they are. Because if you're looking at babies that have just been born and come into this world, they're just shining with love and presence. They're in a constant state of bliss, I would say, just ecstatic joy. And of course, they're dealing with coming into a human body and, learning to be with all that entails, and having hands and, and eating and all the things, and hot and cold, but in their core, there's just this beaming love, and giving ourselves space to reconnect with that can be truly nourishing and healing. And so the principle that I invite in this course is for people to become at home in following their excitement step by step. And excitement doesn't mean we have to navigate towards something really big and make shit happen. It's more about how can we actually create a juicy environment for ourselves, trusting that the synchronicity that we step into when we're in that space will bring us the pieces of the puzzle that we need at the time when it's right. And of course, when that flow is there, we can step in powerfully and also do the work on the material plane to create and bring ourselves powerfully. And that's the final step of the course, is a bunch of tools and suggestions, recommendations, and support for how do we create our own events, whatever they may look like. And so from my own experience, as well as secondhand experience from other facilitators, there is an invitation and an inquiry into how to powerfully create a ritual my way. So there's a lot of suggestions and there's a lot of information that we hand out with an encouragement and a desire for you or for participants to bring their work in their way, while still offering a certain structure that they can use. So yeah, altogether it's a really fun and complete journey. It's a 5-week training that I envisioned back then in 2020 and has been developing together with other facilitators over the past few years. And we've trained me together with 3 different facilitators in 3 different languages. We've also trained almost 100 facilitators or practitioners, I should say, because not everybody wants to facilitate necessarily. In the first place, this course is meant as an invitation for just deeper connection with oneself and with the cacao spirit. And as a result, oftentimes the desire to share something more powerfully comes, and then we obviously fully support that. So yeah, that's a little bit about my training. That's starting on November 20th. I'll answer some more questions about it in a little while, but I also wanted to talk a little bit more about different types of cacao and the cacao that we use and that we recommend to use. There's a lot of different varieties of cacao in the world, and they all basically originate from 2 big native strains. One from South America, from Ecuador, and one from Mesoamerica, which is the south of Mexico and Guatemala, Belize, Honduras, and El Salvador, where a second strain developed or evolved, let's say, spontaneously under the different environmental conditions, circumstances. And this strain specifically is harder to cultivate, and it also has smaller beans, so it's actually commercially less interesting. But it has a much higher content of theobromine, which is the active ingredient. And so that's what we're after, because cacao as a psychoactive can really truly be felt, first of all, in the ritual container, but also the quality of the cacao makes a big difference. So I've worked with different producers of cacao. In the first place with Keith's Cacao, who's an amazing producer, and then also Rukushuleo, Indigenous Mayan Ladies Collective, also produce fantastic cacao. And then I also work with Galileo, who have their own permaculture agroforestry project in central Guatemala. And I've done a lot of market research. It's been a lot of fun doing that. And the main potent producers of cacao are those 3 that I found. There's a few more. So I generally work with 3 to 5 varieties, all Guatemalan cacao, and also receive really good feedback from those. To answer one of the questions that we received, the cacao, it conserves very well. So it's, how can I say this? You can store it in a dry place, in a place that doesn't change temperatures very much, for up to 2 years. But sometimes what will happen is that the fats, so cacao has about 50 to 55% saturated fats. And just like peanut butter, if you let it sit in the cupboard for a long time, the oil separates, it sits on the top. And in a way, this is the same thing that happens with cacao sometimes when it's stored over a long period of time. And specifically when there's temperature changes, it can happen. There's a thing that happens that's called blooming. And that's basically the fats, the cacao butter, that slightly gets separated from the cacao mass, let's say, cacao paste. And it doesn't do anything to the product really. It's once it's heated up, the fats dilute just as well, and it can become just as creamy. Maybe we just have to stir it a little bit harder or whisk it a little bit harder. So yeah, it's perfectly normal for that to happen. And cacao, yeah, it can easily be stored at least 1 year, up to 2 years without problems. Yeah, and so that's the cacao that I also send to people who sign up to the training. I send 1 block of ceremonial cacao, which are 11 ceremonial doses. Full ceremonial doses of 42 grams, which is quite a lot. Some people tend to drink only half to 2/3 of that. I'll explain a lot more about all of that in the training. Yeah, so with that 1 block of cacao, you have enough to journey deeply into the training throughout the 5-week program. And then if there's a desire to share with a bigger group, then then I'll help you get the cacao or recommend where to get it. And yeah, that's a little bit about how I feel cacao can be used and brought into this world in the most powerful way. And she definitely has a mission on this planet. And it's quite simple in a way. It's bringing people back to their bodies and to their consciousness. And consciousness is also a bit of it's an interesting term. I'd like to just talk about that for a little while, because nowadays it's used in so many ways and for so many different reasons. But basically, consciousness is the overseeing awareness. And when we're truly conscious, we're in a space of presence, of observation with what is, which means that we're rooted in the eternal, and that doesn't mean that we negate the 3-dimensional or the material or our body by any means. It actually means that we can show up with more care and with more presence and with more sensitivity in the world, because we're centered, we're in the core of our being, and we're not taken away by the storms of the relative existence. And so consciousness allows us to truly be rooted in our core and in our center. And I want to say be at the center of the storm, because to use the term samsara, in the relative conditional environment that we live in, it's always going to be stormy, because everything's in constant interaction. And we're a part of that beautiful unfolding of life, of that big ocean. But so there's always waves, there can be stormy weather in the ocean. And consciousness allows us to fully be with that and show up for that in a powerfully sentient way. And so all of those things that I was talking about now are things that I really encourage people to step into: embodiment, juice, play, fun, awareness, consciousness, states of presence and meditation, and to bring that together in the heart that's at home in the paradox and the unity of those different parts of reality, with cacao as an ally. So that's my intention for this training. And yeah, it feels really nice to receive your interest and to be able to share a little bit about that. Wanting to invite anybody who's present right now, who's watching, to share any questions if they have. You can put them in the chat. You can, yeah, you can share them on my Facebook profile. And if there's no questions, then I'm also happy to answer any questions that may come later. Let me see. Not receiving any questions straight away. Great, so well, I'm going to continue for a little bit just to explain some practicalities about the training. All the information and to be able to sign up, you can go to onespiritworld.com, and under Cacao Practitioner Training, you can find the full lay of the land, all the practicalities, all the information, how the course is built up, testimonials as well. And then on the bottom of that page, you can sign up. So I'll share the link here in a little bit as well. And so practically speaking, the training starts on the 20th of November. It's built up of 5 consecutive Sunday sessions. So in Guatemala, where I live, it takes place in the morning. So in the US, North America is around the same time as well. 8 a.m., 11 a.m. around that time. And then in Europe and in the UK, it'll start at 4 p.m. and 3 p.m. respectively. And the sessions go for about 3 hours. Usually we don't really go over. And each session is, let's say, a bit of a hybrid cacao ritual. So we get together, we prepare the cacao, well, the first session anyway, and then the sessions afterwards, it's we come with the cacao already prepared, so we can dive in straight away. And we go about ritually inviting the spirit, and then the sessions are built up of embodiment practices, guided meditations, seminars, different transmissions, and also some historical and cultural context that's important to be aware of when using a medicine that's related to a culture, you know, that's been has been used by the Mayan culture for so many years. Yeah, and then we basically have fun. We dance. We sometimes also have sharing circles if time permits, but generally questions and answers will be shared after. So I'll receive all the questions and I'll make a video a few days after the session in order to save some time also during the live calls. And then we also have optional support calls through the week. So usually sometime midweek, there's a 1 hour to 90 minutes, depending on how big the group is, where we have a guided sharing circle. So there's a specific structure and tried and tested practice that I have for that to really allow people to truly sink in. And so that we can also receive some of the individual pieces of the collective process that's happening, because even though it's online and people all live in different places, we are stepping into a group process nonetheless. And even though we're not in the same space physically, a lot of potent interactions and a lot of powerful shifts and energetic connections can happen in the space. So the support calls are not mandatory, and they're optional because some people don't have time to do them or to be present, but they're recommended because it really gives another level of depth to the training and to the journey. And then there's also a Facebook group where all the content is posted, a lot of the PDFs, and yeah, and the guidebook, the manual, and where we can also just connect with each other informally. Yeah, that's about it. That's how the course is built up. And so we'll start on November 20th, and then it finishes on the 18th of December, just before the winter solstice. And yeah, all the information is available on the link that I'll post. And yeah, if you have any more questions, if anybody has any more questions, I'd be very happy to answer them. Just yeah, let me know. Feel free to share a message with me, or whenever you have a question that arises, I'll be happy to answer. Okay, so there's no more questions at this time. Beautiful. So thank you all so much for being here and for taking the time to receive some of my experience and some of the sharings of what Cacao has been able to do for me. And yeah, I wish you all a beautiful evening, and looking forward to receiving any questions or being in touch. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Bye.